Hi, friends. It's Brad Brain. I'm a certified financial planner in Fort St. John, British Columbia. One of the things that I like about the work that I do is from time to time, I will be asked to speak to a group of students. And I always try to make time in my schedule to do that. The reason for that is because young people have something that unfortunately some of us don't have so much of anymore, and that's time. They've got time on their side, and that is a very powerful thing. So I'm going to share with you today some of what I see as being the keys to financial success. This is a presentation that's going to be designed specifically for young people, but there's information in here that everybody can benefit from. So with that in mind, let's get going. So let's talk financial planning fundamentals. And what I'm going to start with today is what I see as being the number one key to achieving financial success in your lifetime. And that is living within your means. Here's a quote from Dickens. He wrote this in David Copperfield. What he's saying here is if you make 20 pounds and you spend a little bit under, you're happy. You spend a little bit over, you're miserable. And you know what? This is more than just a work of fiction. I see this all the time. I don't know how many people I've worked with over my 25 years as a financial planner, but I've had thousands of conversations, like literally thousands of conversations. And I can attest to this 100%. I've seen people who make big incomes and they spend it all and they're miserable. And I've seen people get by perfectly fine on fairly modest means. It's all about living within your means. Okay. Here's why I love talking to young people, because young people can do something that older people just can't, and that is they can get an early start. My number 2 key to financial success: get started early. As Einstein said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. And I'm going to show you why. Let's say I'm going to hire you. And at the time that we're negotiating your contract, I offer you one of 2 contracts. The first one is I will pay you a guaranteed salary of $250,000 a year. No questions asked. $250,000. Alternatively, I pay you a different contract. And in this contract, I'm going to start you with only 1 penny a day. If you can see my mouse tracker down here, 1 penny a day. But your salary will double every single day. Now, which contract do you take? Let's take a look at them. The $250,000 one, that's pretty easy to process that one. It's a flat $250,000. Let's check out how the second contract works. So in day 1, as promised, you get 1 cent. 1 penny. In day 2, you get a raise. Now you get 2 cents. And so on. By the end of the week, you have almost made $1.25. I don't even think you made that, right? You're barely, that's for the entire week's worth of work. But check out what happens after that. In day 8, you go up to $1.20. In day 9, $2.56, and so on. Well, look at this. By the time we get to day 27, you're making $670,000 per day. Day 28, day 29, by day 30, $5.3 million in one day. That's compound interest. Now, in the real world, you're not going to get a chance to double your money every single day, but there's an illustration of the power of compound interest. We'll look at it in some more realistic terms here too. But here's the problem that sometimes happens. It often happens, actually. I want to say sometimes. This happens all the time, and that is it's never a good time to put some money to work. It literally never is. If you wait for a perfect time to do something, you're going to be waiting forever. And commonly what will happen when people are young, they've got all sorts of things they need to do with their money. They want to buy a car. They want to go to school. They want to buy a house. And so up until age 30 or so, people are saying, I just can't. There's too much that I need to do with my money. I got to take care of this stuff first and then I'll save. But you know what happens on the day you turn 31? It doesn't mean that the barriers to investing go away. Now, they may change, but they don't go away. They're just a little bit different now. Because now maybe you do have that family and maybe you do have that house. And I'll tell you something for a fact. If you think it costs a lot of money when you're in your late teen and early 20 years, just wait. Because when kids and mortgages start, now good luck trying to find some extra room to put some money to work. So now there's a new reason why we can't put money to work, a new excuse. And then what happens is people sometimes say, well, I'll just wait till the kids are grown and we'll get started then. You know what happens then? Now we've got grown kids. All those expenses you used to have when you were a teenager in the early 20s, now your kids have them and they're looking to you for help. And then after that, now there's another reason that we just can't, right? We're trying to catch up from all those years of getting things set up for yourself and helping your kids get going. And so the problem now is if we wait for the perfect time, there's never a perfect time. But here's what happens. Here's the consequences of that. I'm going to call this the cost of procrastination. So let's say that you were to invest $100 per month and you're going to go all the way to age 65 and you're going to get a 12% return on your money. Now, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm pulling this information from stuff that I've had. I've been packing this around since early in my career. And that's how long I've been doing this work for, is I've been doing it since interest rates were considerably higher. When I got started in the industry, you could get double-digit return from a Canada savings bond, conservative investment paying double-digit returns. So my material is a little bit dated. I'm not going to update it though, and I'll tell you why. What I want to do is illustrate the power of compounding here. Now, we're not talking about what's a realistic investment. We'll talk about that in time, but I want this to be impactful. So I'm going to leave this in at 12%. And I'll show you how you can update it for whatever rate of return you want in a bit. There'll be a few slides from now. So let's say you're to invest $100 a month. Granted, it's a pretty healthy return. You're going to get going all the way to age 65. Okay, so if you start at age 55 and you just have 10 years to go, what'll happen is you'll put in $100 a month for 10 years. That's $12,000. And you would have been able to accumulate $22,000. So, maybe you buy a car with it. But if you can get started earlier than that, now you can accomplish some magnificent things. So start 10 years early at age 45. Now you've put in twice as much money, but you've ended up with far more than twice as much in your account when you hit 65. And then at age 35, at age 25, at age 20. This is why I love talking to young people, because young people can harness this. It's not much good to tell somebody at age 45 what would happen if they had gotten going at age 20. All we're going to do now is make them feel bad for not getting going early. But to tell you now what you can accomplish if you get started early, now you can actually do something about it. Check this out. At age 20, this person's put in $54,000 by putting in $100 a month in the months between age 20 and age 65. $54,000, but they finish a millionaire. Now, granted, this was a hefty rate of return. We're not arguing that right now. But the point is, look at the difference between somebody who starts early and somebody who starts late. So if we use different rates of return, then the absolute numbers will differ, but the relative numbers won't. The age 20-year-old will always finish so much farther ahead just by getting going early. Now, why is the difference so big? Well, the key is this part right here. It's not just how much you invest, it's how long you're invested for. And why that is because we're not just going to make a slow progression on our rate of return. We're going to earn interest on our interest, on our interest, on our interest, on our interest, and so on. So the longer the time frame we have, the bigger this grows to. So here's an example. Let's say we start with $1,000. If you were to make 10% now, a nice easy round number so you can follow the math, 10% of 1,000 is $100 in rate of return. So a year from now, you have your principal of $1,000 plus 100 in interest, you've got 1,100. So we roll that back in. Now you're making 10%, but you're not making it on 1,000 anymore. Now you're making on the principal plus the interest. You're making 10% on 1,100. So in the first year, you get $100. In the second year, you get 110, and so on from there. So what this means then is the longer that we get going, the bigger the potential that we reach. And here's a way that we can illustrate this. Let's take a look at two people who do the same thing. They put the same amount of money in and they do it they get the same rate of return on their money. But the difference is when they start and when they stop. Okay. So two people, let's say they're age 22 now, and they both decide that they're going to put $2,000 in, but the first person gets going right away And then the second person, maybe they're at school or something. They're going to get going, but they don't do it right away. They're going to wait and they start 6 years from now. So what happens now is the first person puts in $2,000 a year. They do it for 6 years and then they stop for a total investment of $12,000. The second person starts when the first person stops. So they don't start until age 28. But when they do start, they're really good about it. They invest $2,000 a year all the way to retirement. So they do it for 37 years and they've put in 6 times as much money. They put in $74,000. So here's the thing that's cool about this. They had to put in 6 times as much money. They had to do it for 6 times as long just to finish in the same spot. This $2,000 that gets going early for a total of $12,000 versus the $2,000 that's going later, but when it's going, it's consistent about it. Here we are. The first person finishes with $1.2 million from a total investment of $12,000. The second person also finishes with $1.2 million, but from a total investment of $74,000. Those first years are the critical ones. They're the critical ones to building wealth. So not necessarily that you're going to rush out and start saving today, but keep this in mind for when the time's right. Because if you get going early, you don't even have to do it all the way to retirement for it to have a meaningful impact on what your retirement's going to look like. Now, I totally get it that when you're a teenager, retirement seems like a foreign concept. It seems like something that happens to somebody else. But trust me on this. There will be one day sometime in the future where the idea of stopping working is going to start to sound pretty appealing. And when that day comes, you're going to need some money to draw on. So if you want to set yourself up so that you have the choice about you working as long as you would like to versus having to work as long as the money dictates, then you will want to be in the position to make your own choices rather than having your financial obligations dictate how long you work for. So here's my third key to financial success. And this ties into what we spoke about before with those healthy rate of returns, and that is to seek appropriate returns from your investments. I'm going to show you a way how we can, a way that illuminates how important getting a good return on your money is. But I want to be really careful here because here's the thing. There's more to life than just getting a big return on your money. The biggest thing is not actually a big return on your money. I know that sounds weird to say it, but the biggest thing is making financial decisions that are consistent with your objectives. What does that mean? Well, let's say you want to buy a house. Let's say you want to buy a house, and so you started saving a down payment. You've been saving for maybe 4 or 5 years. You accumulated a nice little down payment. Let's say if you accumulated $40,000 or $50,000, and this is the money you're going to use to buy your house, except it's invested in something volatile. And the day before you go to buy your house, your volatile investment drops by 50%. It can happen. There's some investments out there that can easily drop by 50%. So if this is your house down payment money and you put it into something that's volatile and now it compromises the ability for you to buy your house when you want, that's a problem, right? So we want to make decisions that are consistent with your objectives. And there's a trade-off between the rate of return you're going to get and how much risk is involved. Okay, so there is no such thing as a low risk, high return investment. That's important because although it's outside the scope of this talk that we're going to have today, trust me on this. There is no shortage of scams and frauds and deceptions and charlatans out there that are going to try to persuade you sometime in your lifetime that you will be able to get a low risk, high return investment. And realistically, that does not exist. Okay, so you can have a low risk investment, but it's not going to make very much money. And that can be totally okay, right? If you need safety and security and liquidity, then it can absolutely be acceptable to have a low rate of return on your investment just to make sure the money is going to be there for you when you need it. So we're not talking about that right now. What we're talking about now is we're talking about an investment that's appropriate for your risk tolerance and you have a long time frame. And now we can entertain the idea of going after some bigger returns with your money. And when that happens, this is my third key for financial success. You want to take a look at getting a better return on your money. Now, it doesn't have to be 12% or 10%. Maybe it's just moving you from 4% to 6% or 6% to 8% or 8% to 10%. But with all that as a setup for this, let me show you how the rule of 72 works. So what the rule of 72 is, this is a quick way to estimate how long it will take for your money to double. And what you do is you take your expected rate of return, you divide it into the number 72, and the answer is approximately how many years it will take for your money to double. So here's an example. Let's say you expect to make 6% on your money. Well, the number 6 goes into the number 72 12 times. So what that means is if you're able to make a 6% return on your money will double about every 12 years. Okay, so let me show you why you should care about this. Let's say you have a chance to put $10,000 away into 3 different investments. One of them is making 6%, one of them is making 9%, and one of them is going to make 12%. Well, if you invest at 6%, your $10,000 will go to $20,000 over a 12-year time frame. At 9%, you're going to shorten the length of time it takes for that money to double. Now your $20,000 will get to, so your $10,000 will get to $20,000 in just 8 years. And even better, at 12%, now your $10,000 grows to $20,000 in just 6 years. Okay, so let me show you how this works. And this one, I'm going to simplify it. I'm just going to illustrate the 6% and the 12%. This is not complicated, though. You could fill in boxes all day long if you want to look at all sorts of different rates of return. So in the meantime, though, for simplicity, we're just going to look at 6% and 12%. Okay, so the 6% return, now our $10,000 grows to $20,000 in year 12. And then in the 12 years after that, it's going to double again. So we're not going to add $10,000 onto our money. Now we're going to add 20. So not just our principal doubled, but our interest as well. So now doubling our 20 grand, we're at $40,000 in year 24. That might seem okay, but look at this. If we are able to get a bit better return on our money, now we're going to accomplish our goals that much quicker. So in year 6, at 12%, our 10,000 is now 20. In year 12, it's 40. In year 18, it's 80. In year 24, it's $160,000. What that means is this difference in rate of return, it's a healthy 6% difference in rate of return. But what that means is this person finishes with 4 times the amount of money. This is one of my keys, is a small difference in rate of return can have a big impact on what your money is going to grow to over time. Okay, now here's a vitally important thing, and that's interest works both ways. And the whole idea about financial planning is it's making smart decisions so that you can achieve the things that you want to do in your life, whether that's buy a house, start a career, raise a family, buy a car, take a trip, whatever your particular personal financial objectives happen to be. But there's different things that happen in life. And a lot of times what people end up doing is they want stuff now. That's very common. We've got an instant gratification type of society nowadays, and people want things now. Well, here's the thing. There's plenty of people that will lend you money if you want to borrow it from them. The problem, though, is that money ain't free. And so if you end up going into debt, obviously now, not just do we have to pay the money back, but we have to pay interest on the money that you borrow. Now, here's the thing that I can tell you from my practical experience. There are a lot of people that want things now so badly that they go way overboard on borrowing. And that's the problem. Going back to what Dickens said about expenditures and income, right? And my number one rule to financial success, living within your means. So you can see people that live in big houses, but they're mortgaged to the hilt. You can see people that have brand new trucks and brand new toys, but they're all leased. And there's an expression actually that I'm fond of. It's called big hat, no cattle. There's a lot of people that they have the appearances of wealth, But if it's all borrowed money, they don't actually own the stuff, right? It's all showy displays, but it's pretty fragile. Okay. Now here's an example about how this can manifest. I remember a conversation I had with a local business owner a little while ago, and he had just been out riverboating that day, and he happened to meet one of his employees on the river who had the same boat as him. Okay, so the business owner and the employee both have the same riverboat. And he says to me, Brad, something's not adding up because I know what I make and I know what he makes, and something's not adding up. Okay, so you need to pay attention to the idea of borrowing money. And here's an example. If you end up carrying a balance on your credit cards, that is a significant handicap for you to make any sort of financial progress. Now, there are lower interest credit cards out there, but that's not going to change the message here. That changes the details, but it doesn't change the message. And it's not uncommon for credit cards to charge as much as 20% or maybe even slightly more in interest on any unpaid balances. So here's what it means. If you happen to owe $10,000 on a credit card, and a lot of people owe $10,000 on credit cards, and you're putting $200 a month against it, it's going to take you 8 years and 8 months to pay off that balance. That's nuts. Okay, I'm not saying don't do the stuff you want to do. What I'm saying is let's look at how much it would actually cost to pay for something. I actually have something in front of me right now. You can't see it, but I happened to grab a recent credit card statement of my own. And this is just a random statement. One of the things that's very interesting nowadays is credit card companies will put this type of information right on the credit card statement. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my credit cards. I put everything on credit cards. As I look through this, I've got a $36 expense. Here's one for $8.95. Even like $8 expenses are going on the credit cards, right? And why that is because I love my points. A couple of years ago, I flew to Australia first class on points. And trust me, if you're in an airplane for 18 hours, to be able to stretch out that, at least if you're like me, that's a pretty welcome blessing. So to be able to do that on points, to me, that was, to be able to fly first class in the first place was pretty cool. But to be able to do it on points, that was really, really neat. And so every month I've got these credit card balances, but here's the vital important part is every month they're automatically paid in full straight from my bank account. They're set up automatically to draw the full balance and paid off in its entirety every month. And what that means is I actually don't pay any interest at all on my credit cards. Okay, it's only outstanding balances that you pay interest on. But this is a real situation. And this is not, I didn't go and curate this to make a point. This is just a random statement. Now on this particular statement, I've got a balance of $9,700. I put some fairly expensive things on the card that month, but again, I paid it off at the end of the month, right? So it's an unusual bill. Not all my bills are that high, but I want to share with you something. I just got to find it here real quick. Here it is. The estimated time to pay. Okay. Now, on that $9,759, if I paid the minimum balance each month, it would take 77 years to pay that balance off. That's not a joke. It's less than $10,000. So on my example on the page, it's talking about $200 a month, and it would take 8 years to pay it off. This, my example from my statement, my actual statement here is just paying the minimum balance, which would be, I don't even know what it would be, $10. Minimum payment's $10. So if I just paid the minimum payment, it would take 77 years to pay off this balance. That's no more purchases going on. That's just what's already on there. Okay, so we talked on this last slide about money should be your master, not your servant. Okay, sorry, I said that wrong. Money should be your servant, not your master. You should use money to help you, not not have to live your life in a way that money dictates. Like if you have big balances on credit cards. All right. Now, this all sounds good, but how do we make it happen? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a strategy that I've seen a lot of people have success with. And this is perhaps a little bit counterintuitive because one of the almost like, I don't know, this like cherished beliefs in financial planning is the idea of budgeting. We got to have a budget, right? We need a budget for everything. You might even covered budgeting in your material up till now. And to be clear, for some people, budgeting works really, really well, but not for everybody. And if it doesn't work for you, then let's not try to do things that don't work. I have not had a budget, I don't know, maybe in my lifetime. If I ever ran one, it was so long ago I forgot about it. And why that is because I don't operate that way. I just function in a different capacity. So if I was to try to budget, it would be like if you asked me to do things with my left hand, right? You sign my name with my left hand. It's just not natural for me. Now, that absolutely does not mean that I am not planning for the future. I am absolutely planning for the future. I just do it in a different fashion. So here's what budgeting means. Budgeting means in advance deciding how much you're going to spend on different expenditures, different categories, right? How much you can spend on food, how much on entertainment, how much on travel, and then making sure you adhere to that, right? It's predetermining what you're going to spend money on. And then part of that will be what you're going to save for the future, right? You'll budget a certain amount for what you're going to save for the future. What paying yourself first is, we're going to flip that. We're going to just put the money that you need to do the important things in your life away right from the top, right off the top. We're going to just take it right off the top. And knowing that those important things are dealt with, now what that means is we can go ahead and live our lives, right? If you've got money in the bank and you've already put money away to what's important, then go ahead and spend it. So what it'll mean is if one day if you look at your bank account and you got a little bit of money in there and there's a big screen TV on sale, then go ahead, go buy it. Because if you've paid yourself first, you've already done your important things. On the other hand, if you look in your bank account and there isn't anything left, then guess what? Probably shouldn't be getting that big screen TV that month, right? So the important thing is take the money that you need right off the top and put it towards what's important. Perhaps your RRSP, your TFSA, paying down your mortgage, saving for your travel. Whatever you decide that is important to you, you do that first and then spend what's left. And what I can tell you is most people, if let's say they save 10% of their money, most people are able to live off of 90% of their income if they've saved the 10% first. And they don't really notice much of a change in their standard of living. But this is another thing you can trust me on. You absolutely will notice if you spend 100% of your money, you will absolutely notice it. But you don't notice it today. When you notice it is years and years from now when you got nothing to show for all that money if you have not saved along the way. So how much should you save? Well, I'll throw these out as some suggestions, but the real number for you is the right one for you. It could very well be you could save significantly more than this. If you're living at home and you don't have much for expenses, maybe you can save even all your money, right? If you got a part-time job after school, maybe you can save the whole thing. On the other hand, maybe it won't be as much. So, but although then it'll depend on what the right answer is for you. I'll check this out as something to consider. If you were to, here's a couple of book recommendations. Check out The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton. The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton. It's a very easy to read book and it's got some fantastic financial planning concepts in it. And in that book, what Chilton says is save 10% of your income. If you were to do that, and do it consistently, like we showed before in the examples like the twins and the cost of procrastination, if you start that and you start that early, you will accomplish magnificent things. But I'll give you another number. And this is a book called from a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And these authors, what they did is they did a scientific study of what it takes to become a millionaire in your lifetime. right? Not inheriting money, not winning the lottery, but with your own actions becoming a millionaire. And what they found is that it's not that hard, and it doesn't depend on what you have for occupation. You don't have to have some sort of high paid profession. It all comes down to your savings rate. And the average millionaire was saving 15% of their income. So what that means is, let's say you're making $1,000 a month. Well, you put $150 away for the future and live off of $850. And if you can do that, you are very well positioned to be in an enviable spot down the road when it's time to stop working. Okay, so here's my keys to financial success. Live within your means, get going early, seek an appropriate return from your investments, avoid unnecessary debt, and pay yourself first. I hope that makes sense. I really do. But if you got any questions, if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. I'm Brad Brain, and I'm here to help. Take care.